In the late 1860s, my wife and I packed up our young'uns and set out westward in a canvas-covered wagon, drawn by a sturdy team of oxen. My father had settled in Nebraska a few years prior, and his letters spoke of fertile land and new beginnings. With hope in our hearts, we crossed the Missouri River at St. Joseph and joined one of the first wagon trains heading west along the Oregon Trail. The journey shattered our notions of the so-called Great American Desert. The rolling prairies of eastern Kansas stretched endlessly before us, alive with color and promise. When we reached the land my father had chosen, we found it nestled along a spring-fed stream, hemmed in by bluffs capped with ledges of sandstone. As the first green of spring spread across the hills, we stood in awe of the raw beauty around us. With the help of neighbors, we built our first home, a one-room log cabin with a loft, a clapboard roof, and a stone fireplace. Compared to the comforts we had left behind, it seemed rough and unforgiving at first. But as time passed, that little cabin became the coziest place we'd ever known. With spring in full bloom, we tilled the creek bottom, planting corn, potatoes, and melons. The land, rich and eager, promised a bountiful harvest. But nature had more to offer than just crops. Wild strawberries blanketed the hillsides, their deep red berries ripe for the picking. One Sunday morning, my wife and I wandered off, eager to fill our pail. The fruit was so plentiful that we trampled underfoot as many as we plucked, our hands and lips stained with their sweetness. With our pail brimming, we sat on a sun-warmed rock to rest, marveling at how much life had changed since leaving the East. Then my wife pointed across the ravine, her voice tinged with excitement. A patch of strawberries larger and redder than any we had seen glowed in the sunlight beneath a tangle of underbrush. Leaving our pail behind, we hurried over, eager to taste these wonders. As I pushed through the thick brush, my boot caught on something solid. I stumbled, and when I looked down, my blood ran cold. A human skull grinned up at me from its mossy grave. Heart pounding, I scrambled to my feet. My wife, seeing my reaction, rushed to my side. Together, we uncovered more bones, scattered and hidden beneath years of fallen leaves. It didn't take long to realize the horrible truth. This patch of land had once been a burial ground. We gathered the bones with quiet reverence, placing them together as best we could. 12 skeletons, men, women, and children, lay before us, the remains of a lost wagon party, struck down in the wilderness with no one left to mourn them. We dug a grave, laid them to rest, and marked the site with a pile of stones. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat on the cabin's porch, weary but content, believing we had done right by the dead. Then, from the trees, a sound rose on the wind, a mournful, anguished wail. The children clung to their mother, eyes wide with fear. Determined to put an end to it, I grabbed my rifle. "It's just an owl," I said, more to myself than anyone else. "Or a tree toad, maybe." I searched the cornfield, the barn, the creek, everywhere the sound seemed to come from. But every time I thought I had it cornered, the voice moved, always just out of reach. Finally, I turned back toward the cabin, only to find my family had bolted the door from inside. That night, and many after, the wailing returned. We tried to explain it away, but no explanation held. Neighbors came to help, staying up through the night, but the sound remained a mystery. It became known as the lost woman's ghost. Autumn came, and with it, the harvest. But the nightly visitor wore on our nerves. When my wife suggested we spend the winter with my father along the Little Blue River, I readily agreed. We left our homestead behind, only returning by daylight to check on things. Spring drew us back. There were crops to plant, and life had to go on. As night fell, the familiar wail greeted us once more, as if the land itself had been waiting for our return. Then, one afternoon, as we picked strawberries near the burial site, my wife and I climbed a ridge to rest. The view was breathtaking. Rugged hills and deep-cut ravines, their rock walls streaked with time and weather. It was then that we saw her. Nestled against the back of a cavernous ledge, a skeleton lay huddled in a crouch. Her bony arms were raised as if in terror, warding off a final, fatal blow. With great care, we gathered her remains and carried her down to rest with her lost companions. We searched for more, but found only the charred remnants of wagons, fire-warped iron, and oxen bones still trapped in their yokes. Scattered among them, broken arrows told the story, the fate of a pioneer party ambushed and left to die. That night, as I sat on the cabin's doorstep, I wondered, was the voice that had haunted us for so long the spirit of that lost woman, pleading for someone to find her? Had she finally found peace, now that she lay beside her kin? I never heard the cries again. The prairie kept its secrets, and the past faded into memory. But sometimes, when the wind moves just right through the trees, I wonder if, somewhere in the deep hush of the hills, the echoes of her voice still linger.